Newcastle versus Arsenal certainly didn't disappoint, especially if you're a neutral fan. Not so much if you're an Arsenal fan. I'm still finding it quite difficult to swallow the results, but there is plenty to unpack from this game from both a tactical point of view, but also the officials and VAR taking centre stage yet again. This should be a good one. So if you are looking forward to today's video, do go ahead and smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new around here, as I'm very close to 2,400 subscribers, and your help would be super appreciated. But let's waste no more time at all and dive straight into things, shall we? This is how both sides lined up on the night. A couple of notable absentees for both sides. Odegaard for Arsenal, Tonali, Barnes and Botman for Newcastle. Arguably, all of those players just named would have started for both sides. But from a tactical point of view, I don't think it really changed things too much. And as we can see on screen now, Arsenal in their attacking formation and in terms of their shape, things stayed relatively the same. Yes, there were a few kind of tactical tweaks, if you will, which we'll get into now. So, as mentioned, Arsenal in their usual shape with White, Saliba and Gabriel in that usual three, looking to sort of counter those counter-attacks should Newcastle spring into one, with Jorginho and Tomiyasu able to drop a little deeper into a five if needed. And then we've seen that usual sort of attacking front five of Arsenal of Martinelli, Rice, Nketiah, Havertz and Saka. Arguably, you would have Odegaard where Havertz is now, and then someone else in that left eight. And this season, it's been a mix between either Rice, Vieira, Havertz, you name it. I think Arteta's still not quite sure who's best suited to that role. Hasn't found that Granit Xhaka replacement as of yet. Hopefully, he nails down someone sooner rather than later. But interestingly, from an Arsenal point of view, this is the first time that Havertz has started as that kind of left, or should I say right eight, number 10 inside forward. And we definitely saw a different side to Havertz's game. I think it was definitely one of his better performances, barring that tackle we saw sort of midway through the first half, which we'll get into in just a moment. But where Havertz really excelled as a player, the reason why Chelsea bought him in the first place a few years ago was that form he had in Germany, coming in from that right-hand side, drifting inside as more of an inside forward. And if we quickly take a look at his heat map here, we can see just how much space he occupied on that right-hand side. And it didn't really get in Saka's way too much. Saka really kind of hugging that touch line, really sort of creating that width and those options for Arsenal, as we usually see, giving Dan Burn a right headache. Arguably, Dan Burn should have received a yellow card or two in that first half for a number of tackles that he was clearly worried about being turned and the pace of Saka. But as mentioned, Kai Havertz very much occupying a different type of space to the one that we see him when he's playing as a left eight. When he's playing as a left eight, he's a little bit further more advanced, playing more as a sort of second striker, if you will, providing support to the likes of an Nketiah or a Jesus. So from a tactical point of view, I thought it was very, very interesting. But going back to the tactical board very, very quickly, we see right on this left-hand side, and you'd expect him to be the sort of most advanced player in that left eight role. And we saw Tomiyasu get the nod as the left back ahead of Zinchenko in this game, arguably for his sort of defensive attributes. We do know that there are question marks over what Zinchenko provides as a left back from a defensive point of view. What he brings to the party from a passing / sort of midfield player, there's no arguments there whatsoever. Absolutely fantastic. But in a game like this, you can certainly see why Tomiyasu was selected. But the reason why I wanted to bring him up in this game is if we go back to the average shape of both these sides, Tomiyasu was, well, it felt like he was everywhere throughout this game. And interestingly, he was more advanced, as you can see on this screen, than Declan Rice, and more inverted than Declan Rice. And it gave me the sort of vibes, if we look here at Declan Rice, if you can kind of take yourself back to some of the tactical analysis videos that I've had on this channel or maybe other channels, when you look at where Zinchenko put himself in the Arsenal side, it would very much be where Tomiyasu is now. And you would see Granit Xhaka sort of come into not necessarily a left-back role, but he'd come more out to the left-hand side. And he would help with those counter-attacks, dropping into more of a kind of left-back role. Now, I'm not saying that this happened throughout the game against Newcastle, because the level of driving runs that Declan Rice made through the middle in this game was just utterly unbelievable. Very much a focal point in the midfield for Arsenal. But what I thought was very interesting was the fact that he was sort of more to the left-hand side and a little deeper compared to Tomiyasu. So, yeah, just wanting to kind of touch on that and maybe sort of put a bit of a pin in it to see how that changes over the coming weeks. And I think this will obviously alter depending on the opponent, of course, as well. But again, going back to the tactical board, this is how Arsenal lined up. And Arsenal played against a very sort of similar system in the last few weeks, where we've seen a midfield five that we're up against. Now, Arsenal were able to kind of get through the lines and around Newcastle, not easily. It was a very good tactical battle. Arsenal and Newcastle both kind of cancelling each other out as such. But obviously, Wilson would press the ball as well. When the ball came into midfield here, what we would often find is Longstaff would come in on Tomiyasu or Joelinton. And then if the ball came out to the right-hand side, we would see Joelinton come here and Wilson come here, sort of cutting off those passing lanes. So it's a really, really, really interesting battle. But when we saw White come out to more of the right-hand side, providing that width, for example, width with the ball, for example, and we see these triangles that Arsenal like to create, we would see Joelinton come in here. Gordon would look to maybe press the ball slightly. But what they made sure always happened, both on the left and the right-hand side, because we know how much of a threat Arsenal have with the likes of Saka and Martinelli, especially on this right-hand side, because White does offer more on the overlap compared to someone like, say, Tomiyasu, is the way they kind of doubled up and sat into this sort of formation to stop Havertz getting into these little pockets of space here and not allow Saka to get down the line and wide and then cut back in on his left foot, because if he did cut back in on his left foot, Gordon would be there and Burn would be looking to sort of cut this passing lane off. So from a tactical point of view, I thought that was really, really interesting. And then Newcastle, their kind of stance going forward was quite interesting as well. Obviously, we would see Wilson in this advanced position, Saliba, White, Gabriel in that usual kind of back four. We would see Arsenal set up in their usual kind of 4-4-2 formation with Nketiah and Havertz at the top of that 4-4-2. Saka on the left-hand side. But interestingly, we saw Trippier get more advanced down this right-hand side. We saw a back three of Burn, Cher and Lascelles. Gordon obviously getting forward here. We saw Almiron occupying this space as more of a front three. Longstaff sitting in behind. Guimaraes sitting a little bit deeper. And then Joelinton in this kind of space here. So it was an interesting battle. This will be mirrored in the shape here of Newcastle, as we can see on screen very, very quickly. I think the only anomaly in the average shape for Newcastle was Trippier, because Dan Burn had to come off at half-time with a back injury. So he went from playing as a right back to playing as a left back. So we can see here a lot of heat on both the left and the right-hand side. So in terms of his sort of average positioning, it's a little bit skewed. But as I mentioned, we see Almiron and Wilson as that front two, as I've just shown you on the tactical board. We see Gordon offering sort of more of a kind of front three when he did get forward, but obviously occupying that left-hand space when he needed to come back and defend. And then we've seen Longstaff, Guimaraes and Joelinton sort of offering that midfield sort of support when attacking, but also quite deep. And that's why we've seen Longstaff quite deep here from the point of view of when they wanted to defend. So they set triggers up for when certain players in midfield and Arsenal's defenders would get the ball. They would take turns at sort of pressing Arsenal, whether it be on the left-hand side, the right-hand side, as we've just covered on the tactical board. But let me know down in the comments below, have I missed something? Did you see something that I haven't? Maybe you think I'm wrong and there was a sort of a tactical approach that Newcastle took or Arsenal took that was a little bit different to the way that I've seen things. Let me know down in the comments below. So let's take a look at how this game unfolded. Key moments, if you will, something that we always cover on this channel. And to start with, we can see on screen here the momentum of how the game kind of unpacked through that 90 minutes. And I thought Arsenal, having played away from home at a stadium that is very difficult to go to, Newcastle have made it somewhat of a fortress. We weathered that storm quite nicely for the first 20 minutes or so. And whilst we didn't create too many, if any, sort of clear-cut chances in that sort of first 20 minutes, we had a lot of possession of the ball. We handled the press of Newcastle very, very well. There were a few edgy moments when Arsenal were playing around with the ball at the back. And we handled it very, very well. And I think where the biggest turning point came in that first half, because there weren't really any sort of clear-cut chances for either side to kind of talk of, if I'm honest with you, is the Kai Havertz challenge in that first half. Now, I don't think St. James's Park is on par with somewhere like Anfield, where you want to silence the crowd because they really have an influence on the game. It would be very close to that, in my opinion. But the last thing you want to do is go to St. James's Park, a place that they've made a fortress, and really rile up the crowd, especially after you've silenced them with the way Arsenal took control of that game early doors. And as you can see on screen now, Havertz, a very, very lucky boy. And what I mean by that is he comes into this challenge very late. He leaves the ground. His studs are showing. And I suppose, fortunately for him, the challenge is a little in front of Longstaff here. So it doesn't actually make any connection with the player. Maybe his trailing leg clips him a little bit and Longstaff goes down. The crowd go absolutely wild. Players crowd round. Absolute pandemonium erupts in the stadium. But I suppose if Havertz makes any connection with the player, with his right foot here, not only is the player in danger with his foot being planted, but I certainly would have seen a different outcome. And I'm sure a lot of fans would have said the same. And the way it was sort of determined as only a booking, and the reason why it wasn't reviewed, or should I say why VAR didn't ask the referee to review it on the screen, was it was described as reckless and not dangerous, hence the yellow card. Now, after this, as you can imagine, lots of Newcastle players kicking off, and Newcastle ended up with more bookings after this than Arsenal. Havertz obviously getting the booking for the challenge, and then 3 players afterwards then got booked for all of the pandemonium that sort of led after. But it very much changed after that. It was on a knife edge, so to speak, and not too long after this, whilst there were not tackles necessarily flying in, but there was certainly an edginess to the game all the way up until half-time and up until the end of the game, really, if I'm honest with you. Bruno Guimaraes, a very lucky boy just before half-time, he, for some reason, I'm not too sure why or what was going through his head, decides to throw an arm out. It was his forearm that hits the side of Jorginho's head after he's played the ball. You can see here on screen, the ball is no longer at the feet of Jorginho, but he decides to throw an arm out. It was reviewed by VAR. For some reason, the referee wasn't asked to go over to the screens and have a look at this. Bruno Guimaraes did get a booking in the second half. If he picks up a booking here as well, yes, I know VAR don't ask referees to look at the screen for bookings, but if this was something that was picked up by the referee, even if it wasn't a red card offence, arguably, Bruno Guimaraes does get sent off in the second half. Again, let me know down in the comments below on these 2 challenges that we've seen here. What were your thoughts? Were they the right decisions? Was Havertz lucky to escape a red card? Was Bruno Guimaraes lucky to escape one too? Should the referee have picked it up? We do know that following the run of play, sometimes these things are missed, and that's the reason for VAR. But 2 very key moments in the first half, not necessarily turning points as such, but they could have been if decisions would have gone a different way. But where things really did change was the second half. Both teams came out flying, of course, and you wouldn't expect it to be any different. Both teams continuing to cancel each other out from a tactical point of view. And just before their goal, which we will speak about in just a second, there was a slight tactical change where Gordon went up front, for example, Wilson coming off. And I don't think that had anything to do for the reason why Newcastle opened Arsenal up in any way, shape or form, in my opinion. And we can see here with the momentum, the goal came on the 64th minute. There was a very kind of back and forth openness to this game in that second half. Both teams really wanting to kind of go for it. And the nature of this goal really did kind of kill things off in terms of what Arsenal wanted to do. It felt like there was about 10, 15 corners for Arsenal in that last sort of 10 minutes. But let's have a look at this goal. Let's have a look at the key talking points. It's literally everywhere on social media. Arsenal fans, Newcastle fans, Premier League fans, fans of football all over are speaking about it. And I'd love to hear your opinion. I'll give mine, of course, as well. So this was the first questionable decision which was reviewed by VAR. Now, in my opinion, this ball is out. We can see daylight between the ball and the line and the pitch. Some argue that it's down to the angle, and if there was more of a bird's eye view, it would look different, and there would be maybe a centimetre or so of the ball touching that white line, which I can see that argument. But there is goal line technology that looks all the way along the line in terms of a camera, and we were told that there wasn't sufficient amount of evidence in order to make a conclusive decision for this particular incident. Okay, fair enough. That's incident number one. There were 3 in total, and this is what really kind of grips my you-know-what, is the fact that there were three decisions here, and not one of them went Arsenal's way. So the second one is the push on Gabriel here at close to the back post. Some are arguing that Gabriel has gone for the ball, and this is the reason why he's in the position that he's in. My argument is why would Gabriel go for the ball and duck underneath it? You can clearly see 2 hands here on the back of Gabriel. It says that the VAR checked it for a possible foul. This is just a still picture of what happened in the moment. When you're looking at it in real time, you can clearly see the arms of Joelinton come out and push Gabriel. Again, for me, this is a foul. This is number 2, which is, 2 reasons why this goal shouldn't have been given. And you can certainly see why Arteta was upset, calling it a disgrace and an embarrassment. This is number 2. The more difficult one, and the one I say I give them kind of, granted, was a bit more difficult, was the offside here. Gabriel becoming the last player because Raya is in front of him. And it's a little bit more difficult to see where the foot and leg of Gordon is when the ball is played from Joelinton. But it just really gets under my skin that there were 3 possible incidents here where this goal couldn't have been given. And pretty much all of them were inconclusive evidence, which is absolutely mind-boggling to think that VAR was introduced to kind of help with these decisions. And, you could maybe argue that in a game there is 1 or 2 that's difficult to really understand, but 3 in the same goal, to not be able to produce conclusive evidence, I don't know. Let me know down in the comments below. A lot of angry Arsenal fans in a game where there's so much on the line, VAR being brought in to help decide games by fine margins. It's a really, really, really tough one to swallow for me. And VAR was brought in to help, not make things more difficult. There is so much to be said. If we take the goal completely out of the equation, if that goal was kind of scratched off and the game finished 0-0, I would have completely understood. I understand that, if Arsenal lose because of a screamer that goes top bins, I completely take it. But when Arsenal lose because of a goal like this, it's really, really hard to swallow. And especially when you look at the sort of match stats, yes, we had more possession and yes, we had more shots. But generally speaking, it was a very, very equal game where both sides cancelled each other out throughout the 90 minutes. There weren't even too many chances created for either side after this goal either. And that's what makes it all that much more difficult to really kind of take this result. But let me know down in the comments below your thoughts on these VAR decisions, not just the ones in the second half which decided the game with the goal, but also those in the first half as well. Normally at this point of the video, I'd go through some players and their stats, maybe some standout performers, but I think we've probably covered quite a bit already, and I wouldn't necessarily say that there was an outstanding player for Arsenal on the day. I'm sure if you guys want to go and check out some player stats over on SofaScore or one of the various other sites, you're more than welcome to. But for me personally, there weren't really any outstanding performers. Do let me know down in the comments below who your Arsenal man of the match is, along with what feels like about 100 other talking points from this game. So do let me know your thoughts down below. But that is going to about wrap things up for this video. If you have enjoyed, learned something new, do hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new around here, as I am so close to 2,400 subscribers. The Arsenal Analysed Discord server link will also be the top comment down below. Absolutely free for you to join if you fancy talking Arsenal a bit more often. But as mentioned, that's going to about wrap things up until the next preview video on the channel. So do keep an eye out for it. But for now, I'm JC. Take care, stay safe, and come on, you Gunners.